Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is your host, Tarod McKnight, and you are now tuned in to Tarodcast. For all of our brand new listeners joining in and listening to us for the very first time, welcome. If you are a returning listener coming back for another weekly dose of Tarodcast shenanigans, welcome back. Now at Tarodcast, you can take everything we say with a grain of salt. We simply just want to add some flavor to your meal. So if we are doing that, then we are doing our job. Today's episode may rub some people the wrong way, but it's because, for me, the experiences I had growing up in regard to my spiritual background have shown me the way that sometimes people within this realm of belief can treat other people or view other people who have gone through certain experiences. And so, without further ado, today's topic: trauma, abuse, and God. This is Tarodcast. Let's get it. All right, everyone. Welcome. This is your host, Tarod McKnight, and you are tuned into Tarodcast. I hope that everybody is doing well. This episode is actually coming hot off the heels of the versus battle between Nelly and Ludacris, and man, oh man, that was a wonderful battle. And really, it wasn't really a battle, because the amount of love that these two men were showing for one another as they were playing their music, it was really beautiful to watch. And it's crazy because so many hits were a part of my childhood soundtrack. And it's amazing to just sit back and think about the fact that your brain can store so much information that you didn't even know you had in there. It's like when you hear these songs, these words just come back and you're able to sing along, and they're attached to memories and just all kinds of things. And so it was a wonderful experience. I really enjoyed that battle, and I can't wait to continue watching these, because these are such interesting little showcases of, for all these artists. And I don't know, with yesterday's battle, it was unique because I feel like for the remainder of my 2020, it's going to be summed up as the following: Nelly's energy and Ludacris's facial expressions. And I'm just going to leave it at that. If you haven't watched it, then you need to go find it and watch it. And also just read the comments. The comments were gold. It's definitely something that I highly encourage anybody to go back and watch, because it was such a wonderful experience. But today's episode is not about the versus battle. It is about trauma, abuse, and God. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and take care of our housekeeping duties. So, if you would like to take our show with you on the go, just know that we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Podchaser, Castbox, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, Deezer, and YouTube. We've also got a podcast player on our website, CRTN.com, CRTN-T.com. So if you want to listen to podcast episodes up to date, just make sure to visit our website as well and click on Tarodcast, and you'll be able to listen from our website directly. Also, Tarodcast is on Throne. Throne is a free live messaging application that allows us here at Tarodcast to exclusively reach our listeners. Make sure to sign up if you'd like to keep the conversations going after the episode. If you're looking for natural oils for ultimate hydration and care for your hair and skin, hit up the Resilient Lotus at www.theresilientlotus.com. And last but not least, if you are a lover of authentic, chunky salsas, make sure to reach out to Morenitas Salsitas. All this information, as always, will be in our episode notes. Now, what is trauma? That's how we're going to start this show today. We're going to be talking about what trauma is. And so Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines trauma as an injury, such as a wound, to living tissue caused by an extrinsic agent. Also, it's defined as a disordered psychic or behavioral state resulting from severe mental or emotional stress or physical injury. Now, in looking at these definitions, we see that trauma comes from an outside force that affects any living being in a way that causes heightened levels of stress during the course of that being's life, or when that being is able to recall triggers of said trauma. Now, this kind of recollection can take place in animals, plants, as well as us human beings, because if you think about it, no living being is exempt from trauma. Now, for example, on the plant side, the scent that you smell from freshly cut grass, that is a distress chemical emitted by grass in response to it being cut. So if you can ever think about the smell of fresh cut grass, what is actually happening is grass releasing chemicals into the air that basically is screaming. Like, grass actually does emit a sound. We're just not attuned to hearing it, but the grass itself is responding in pain, and it's basically triggering those healing cells within its structure to begin repairing the parts that were cut. So for all the vegans out there, I hope that you're thinking about those plants and plant-based foods that you're eating, because those plants were also in pain. No, vegan is probably the healthiest lifestyle you could have, but at the same time, look, plants are in pain too, so we need to consider their feelings as well. For animals, the impact of being attacked and potentially killed creates an instinct that heightens their avoidance of conflict and danger, especially for animals considered prey animals. Now, I know the majority of us have seen The Lion King, and we all know about the speech that Mufasa gave to Synba when they were looking over the Pride Lands, and Synba was asking his father about the food that they eat, and he went into the explanation that the animals that we eat, they eat the grass, and then we eat the animals that eat the grass, and then when we die, we become the grass, and so the circle of life just continues. And I thought that was a good definition as far as how that is concerned. Now, when you think about this in real life, you see predatory animals like lions, tigers, bears, oh my, and the prey animals like zebra, gazelle, and stuff like that, and you see that when it comes to their relationship, it is predatory prey. And so the prey is oftentimes tasked with the obligation to escape for their self-preservation. But oftentimes whenever you see animals being chased, they end up getting caught and they don't really get away. But in the off chance that an animal is able to get away from a predatory animal, then they're scarred. They have to live with that the rest of their life, and their instinct rather is impacted because of that experience, because of that injury, because of that scarring. And so they are more apt to escape when it comes to situations like that, if they are still able to move in the way that allows them to do so. Now, also for us humans, if we have lived through a traumatic experience, our brains store that information, and it also heightens our fight, flight, or flee response when we experience triggers that resemble those experiences. Now, this is where things like PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder comes into play. Now, the Mayo Clinic defines PTSD as a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, and severe anxiety, as well as uncontrollable thoughts about the event. Now, when I think about PTSD, I know for me, one of the first places that particular word or acronym goes to is the military veterans, those who have served in the military, and also those who continue to serve in the military. The things that they see, the things that they experience, the things that they are able to witness that the majority of us will never be able to see. And when I think about the fact that they come home and they think about these experiences, everything they see, all of their senses have been impacted, and these items are stored in their brain. And I can only imagine the type of pain that actually goes through someone who has recounted an experience, especially those who have lost people while engaging in these experiences. And, it's amazing to see what they go through, to know what they go through. And, even for those of us who are not in the military, we also have seen and experienced traumatic experiences, and the way that we deal with those situations is the same. The way that our brain processes these things are the same. And it's just very interesting to think about the fact that, our brains are capable of trying to figure out the best way to cope with these types of situations. And the thing is, sometimes we're not necessarily built to relive these types of things, because really they're not something that people should be used to. And so you can tell that there's this spike of adrenaline. There's this, immediate engagement of your fight, flight, or flee response. And it's just, it's interesting to see what our brains will do in order to preserve us and to preserve our bodies. And so, just thinking about that, it's really something that, just I don't know, it's amazing just to think about how remarkable our brains are, but also how we can literally just change the course of how we think because we bear witness to those types of experiences. So with this in mind, we can see that the mental or neurological health of any living being can be affected by a traumatic event. The kicker is the value that we as humans place on certain beings and certain events. As humans, we consider ourselves top of the food chain when it comes to our brain power and our advancements. But the actual effects that happen because of PTSD, it's a shared experience that we don't often realize. Now, again, going back to the animals, I think about the animals who have been abused. Again, I'm not an animal rights activist who places animal life on the same level or above human life, because we, like animals, are also instinctual beings when it comes down to it. But if you've ever adopted an animal from an animal shelter who's been abused, then you tend to notice that there are certain behaviors that the animals have that are uncharacteristic of how they should act. It's because the animal remembers. The animal is traumatized. And so they act because they remember how they were treated. And it doesn't matter that memory is rooted in instinct. You see that the animal is very uncharacteristic of how that particular animal should be. And this is why, for those who make it their mission to rehabilitate these animals, people tend to feel so deeply and create emotional attachments when it comes to restoring an animal's ability to live and thrive. Now, I don't believe this is wrong at all, because I honestly salute those who do it. But, again, I'm not an animal rights activist. But it's also the same for us humans as well. For us, living through a single or a series of traumatic events irrevocably takes a toll on our mental health. Now, because we are such complex beings with brain structures that surpass any computer, the way that our minds affect our mental and bodily responses to stimuli that resembles our trauma, it causes us to have that surge in adrenaline, just like what I said before. And in that surge of adrenaline, that instinctually raises our red flags pertaining to our fight, flight, or flee responses. Now, there are some of us who live as survivors of trauma, and then there are some of us who identify as victims of trauma. Now, when it comes to this particular difference, I wanna also say this as well. I am not here to highlight one trauma over the other or to put down anyone who is a victim of trauma. The thing that I am specifically saying is that a survivor of trauma is someone who has been able to figure out the best way for them to work through and to live and to continue to succeed despite the fact that they have survived that trauma, not negating any negative effects that it may have on them at all. But when it comes to victims of trauma, those who allow that trauma to define their life, or they want a specific trauma to happen in order to be a part of a group of people, just to be a part of the club. It's not even about the trauma itself. It's about this. It's more so about the identification of, oh, I did this too, then, or I seen this too, and I've been a part of this too. So now I can join this group of people. Yay. That kind of thing, where it's not even about the trauma in your actual healing. It's about the attention you could potentially get because of it, and the fact that you continue to allow that to be the story of your life, and you continue to forever see yourself as the victim in order to gain a certain type of attention. And this is different from bringing awareness about people like you who have gone through the trauma. This is more so a selfish type of mindset where you use this trauma, whether it was experienced or not, because there are some people out here who haven't gone through any type of trauma, but they want to be part of something so bad, or they want attention so bad that they will use something like this in order to get that attention, because attention is also currency. And that's the thing, what we give our attention to and who we give our attention to, that is also a form of currency. And so some people know that, and they will use that victim type of mentality in order to get the attention that they actually want. And that's the difference here. That's the difference. And so I say this because I understand that based on our social economic experience, as well as the frequency of the trauma, our brains begin to process that trauma and store its effects on us in our brain. This is why things like Stockholm Syndrome exist. Now, according to Healthline.com, with Stockholm Syndrome, hostages or abused victims may come to sympathize with their captives. This is the opposite of the fear, terror, and disdain that may be expected from the victims in these situations. Now, over the course of time, some victims do come to develop positive feelings towards their captors. They may even begin to feel as if they share common goals and interests. The victim may begin to develop negative feelings towards the police or authorities. They may also resent anyone who may be trying to help them escape from the dangerous situation they're in. Now, just thinking about this particular condition alone, it fascinates me to think about what our brains are capable of when it comes to coping with traumatic experiences, and the fact that our specific self-preservation instincts are so complex. There's a show out there called Money Heist where I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but it's a wonderful show. You need to watch it. But one of the people who is being held hostage by the group taking over that facility ends up falling in love with them, and they go on to, in later seasons, have this relationship, and you kind of find it cute as you watch it, but at the same time, they do give callbacks to the fact that, with everybody there, with everything that was going on, this relationship blossomed out of a terrifying event. And all the people there use names of cities as far as how they go by their identification. And so for this particular person, when she is in this relationship with this one guy, she ends up just bonding with him and then, accepting his cause, and she calls herself Stockholm. And it's just a very interesting thing just to think about. But it's one of those things where you watch it and you see it, and it's just like, wow. But our brains are really, really interesting, because I don't know, just the fact that we're able to find ways, or our brain is able to find a way to cope with these types of experiences in order to preserve our well-being. It's just, I don't know, we are complex. We are complex. But also, those of us who come out of the other side of trauma realize that the darkness of the world and its people is so apparent. And we adapt to eliminate that realization from our lives and do everything we can to avoid anything that resembles that trauma. I think about the people who have been forced to overcome these types of traumas, especially in the Black community, where a lot of us are known for our pedophilic family members and general abusers looking to exert power and dominance over those that they deem weaker. Now, this type of predatory behavior, for the sake of maintaining an image of strength and unity, is very often overlooked and swept under the rug in order to protect the abuser. Now, I never understood this. We hear about the high-profile cases like Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, and even R. Kelly, but so many of us don't believe that it can happen to us, or that it can happen to people that we love. But oftentimes, it does, and we just choose not to believe it. And in cases like this, Because Black Americans have little actual culture and specific resources afforded to us by the acknowledgement of the sovereignty of our existence on the federal government side, these types of traumas that happen in our neighborhoods and families often go unnoticed and, in the worst cases, ignored. So, to whom or to what do our people typically and culturally turn to try and address and heal from these traumas? Well, we'll go into that after our break. Make sure you have your water close by, take a sip, and we'll be right back. This is Tarodcast. Yo, what's good, everyone? This is your host of Tarodcast, Tarod Rashan, and I just want to welcome you to the commercial break. Now, you already know what time it is. It's hydration time. Get some high-quality H2O in your system now. Got a few things I'd like to go over. First, to all of our new and returning listeners, thank you so much for your ear and your time. To all of our Patreon supporters, I just want you to know that we are not able to do this without your direct support. So the biggest, dopest Tarodcast thank you goes out to you. If you're listening in and you're thinking about becoming part of the Tarodcast Patreon family, we'd love to have you. You can find us at www.patreon.com/Tarodcast. Now on Patreon, we have 3 tiers of support. A $2 tier, a $3 tier, and lastly, a $6 tier. Each tier comes with its own set of unique perks, so if you find one that fits you, sign up. For us, the main thing is keeping our subscription prices affordable. We know that you work hard for your money, and if you choose to support Tarodcast this way, we truly want to make it worth your time. To find out more about our Patreon and the perks with each tier, visit www.patreon.com/Tarodcast. We've got it all laid out for you. Also, we've got a merchandise store. Pick up some tees, hoodies, leggings, and more at forevercertain.redbubble.com. All proceeds go right back into the Tarodcast podcast and allow us to keep making high quality content for people just like you. For our listeners out there who would like to support us in a non-monetary way, we'd love that too. Share our show with people you know. Also, share us on your social media. And if your favorite Tarodcast streaming service allows you to rate and review our show and you're loving what you're hearing, take some time and leave us a 5-star review. Ratings and reviews are what set us apart from other podcasts and also helps us to recommend our podcast to other listeners we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to reach. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out to us directly, email us at tarodcast@CRTN-T.com. That's tarodcast@CRTN-T.com. All of this information can always be found in our episode notes, so make sure to check there if you forget any of the information we just went over. Once again, thank you all so much, and let's get back to the program. All right, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Tarodcast, and I am your host, once again, Tarod Rashan. So, when we went on our commercial break, we left you with the question, to what or to whom do we turn when it comes to dealing with the effects of trauma? And for many of us, for a lot of us, for about 99.5% of us, it was religion. So we are going to talk about God's plan. Now, for many of us, we grew up with religion being a staple in our lives that was none of our own doing. Many of our families, including members of my own, have adopted the Joshua 24:15 stance on religion, which says, according to the New King James Version of the Bible, "And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Now, for me, religion was something we were born into and not something we were given the choice to accept on our own once our minds were capable of decision making. It was the standard. We weren't necessarily sure why it was the standard, but we accepted it because it was our family. I know that a lot of the Spanish-speaking community is affected by this as well. I remember a coworker of mine telling me, "I don't know why I'm Catholic. I just am." And with that, came the specific observance of traditions that were specific to the Catholic religion and community. For a lot of us, religion is something that we were born into based on the beliefs of our parents and the beliefs of their parents. A lot of us grew up in the church. I think it'd be fair to say that, again, 99.5% of Black Americans have some sort of religious preference towards Christianity that stems from our familial history. Now, for me, it was the Church of Christ, also deemed the one true church. It was the religious system that made me feel set apart and more biblically correct than the Baptists, the Methodists, the Church of God in Christ, the Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Pentecostals, the Assemblies of God. The list goes on. Basically, anyone and everyone who didn't fill our church pews on Wednesdays and Sundays. But one of the commonalities that I saw is that God has a plan for our life. His ways are not our ways, and we have to cast all of our cares upon the Lord. Now, to me, this belief system is rooted in effectively abandoning and suppressing the beliefs that we have in favor of a faith-based method of thinking that, according to Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, when I think about this in my non-religious, logical adult brain, it is the complete submission to an idea that you believe is greater than you are. It is the giving up of your innate, self-preserving, rationalized thinking in favor of a being whose teachings, despite written by men and not the being itself, are greater and more all-encompassing than our own. Now, as I've lived, I've come to my own personal understanding that what or whom we give our power is what ultimately controls us, as well as the thoughts that we have. Now, on the surface, I don't find this to be innately bad. However, what I do find problematic is when we are not given the choice to decide whether or not we take on such a belief system as our own. It's so just interesting to think about the fact that we are born into certain things, because I don't know, it's because things like this are so heavily integrated into our frame of mind. Once we are able to speak and understand, we believe it to be true. We believe it to be everything that we need, but we're not given the choice. So when it comes to trauma, many of us, including myself, were taught to essentially pray it away, which is to call upon the Lord to heal us and remove the negative ramifications of our trauma. Now, the fault in this, to me, is the negation of our ability to seek adequate help to realize, accept, and work past our traumas. We're expected to wait on God, who, from the standpoint of God may not work on our time, but he's always on time, has the power and influence to change our lives and heal us whenever he sees fit. The problem that I have with this is that people could be experiencing multiple prolonged traumas while waiting for this being to intervene and save you from the trauma itself, instead of dealing with the source of the trauma. I think about the children who have been raped, molested, and physically abused, and how nothing immediately happens to the abuser before or in the moment where the trauma begins. If we think about God and his immense and immediate ability to intervene directly in biblical times, literally decimating cities and striking down humans who defied his plan, flooding the whole world. I find this to be very interesting, because in the current day, it seems like God takes more of a back seat while we live here on earth with Satan, who he casted down from heaven. He sent him to earth. And the thing is, why would Satan be down here with us? Why couldn't he be on another planet or somewhere else in the galaxy? I never understood that, because since he's here on earth with us, Satan is always busy. Now, in my mind, children who are abused or who are about to be abused in any way should have their abusers stricken down before it happens. But to me, God is passive. He'll allow it to happen, only for the abused child to grow up to recall that abuse and use it as a potential testimony for his will. Now, while I'm all for people to share their stories and reach others who may or may not have suffered and survived through a trauma, I have to also acknowledge those whose traumas were too much to bear. I have to acknowledge those who took their own life in order to make that pain stop. I have to acknowledge those who couldn't go forward because their abusers were too powerful and too untouchable for even God to strike down immediately in that moment. I'm not content with thinking that the afterlife will be the place where abusers will get their justice, because they are somehow still free to ruin the lives of innocent people in this world. And that's not fair to me. People like that shouldn't have to wait to receive their punishment. I believe they should be tortured here and now for all of their transgressions, as their victims are the ones who choose whether or not to live with the repercussions of their actions. Some do, and some don't. And from what we know, regardless of their choice, the experience itself still takes a toll on their mental well-being. Unfortunately, as a community, we are not equipped to provide the proper protection, therapy, and care for our own, and religion only offers a band-aid to those who truly need help. You'd think that God would understand the decision of someone who takes their own life to stop the suffering, but from the religious standpoint, even that is an automatic first-class trip to hell. I know you've heard this. Somebody who commits suicide is automatically sent to hell because they are not giving themselves a chance to live. But some people they just can't do it. They can't do it. The pain is too much. The mental toll is too much. The experience is too much. And they'd rather end it. And that's the part that really, really strikes me. Because some people are able to make it through. And I'm glad that there are people out here who are able to survive trauma and to not let it define who they are, to move past it, to be happy, to be successful, even if they bear the scars. But there are also others who it's too much. It's too much for them. And I still honor them. I don't automatically believe that they're in hell. Wherever they are, I know it is way more peaceful than where they used to be. So when we come back from our next break, we'll tie this all up together. We need to know that those of us who have survived trauma still have power, and we can use that power outside of our traditional and cultural norms. So make sure you still have your water close by, take a sip, and we'll be right back. This is Tarodcast. All right, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope that you are continuing to be hydrated. I hope that you are continuing to just take this information for what it is. Again, like I say all the time, you can take it with a grain of salt. We just want to inspire the conversation. We want to be able to get people thinking. So that is our main mission here at Tarodcast. So let's go ahead and get on with the tail end of our show. So for those of us who have survived trauma, We deserve to have the care, therapy, and resources necessary to heal our minds and our lives. With this episode, I can only speak from my personal experience with what I've seen and experienced regarding religion and its involvement in my life. Because I am now a firm believer that we must give our children the right to choose what or whom they believe without our particular religious influence if we have a specific religious belief. Now, regarding my own personal beliefs, I believe that in some cases, especially within the most hard-headed and immovable people, that something traumatic or tragic must happen in their lives in order for them to see life and people differently. But in the same vein, as I think about the impact of trauma in our lives, we have every right to speak out and prevent these types of situations from happening as much and as often as we can. I believe in empowering one another to recognize the strength within ourselves first, not to simply identify as a victim whose trauma defines us, but as survivors whose lives can still be strengthened and fulfilled without giving that trauma the power to control us. Now, I recognize that this in no way is an easy task, and nor do I believe that everyone will feel the same way that I do. But I strongly believe in the strength that we have to work through and overcome our traumas within ourselves with the support of the right village of people surrounding us. Now, if we find that village through people of like-minded beliefs, unexpected relationships, a religion or belief system that we choose that isn't chosen for us, or simply we find that within ourselves, we owe it to ourselves to exercise everything we have within us to heal if we are in a position to do so. I feel that we must also honor and uplift the memory of those whose traumas were too much for them to bear. As much as it hurts my soul, I can respect those who have made the decision to end their suffering at their own hand. It's something I know I'll never understand. But for those of us who do, and who fight through those feelings of suicide, the feelings and thoughts are all too real. We have to remember as well as accept that human life is not valued based on religious beliefs that we have. It's based on the impact that we have on one another as we interact with one another. For all we know, those who proclaim God is working on me will never reach a point where they feel like their faults and negative traits are truly healed. For a lot of people, the phrase is a scapegoat to prolong their unchanged behavior until something either miraculous or tragic happens that forces them to address their negative traits head on and remove them from the back burner. If you find that religion is something that has worked for you, then I am all for it. As long as it was your decision to turn to the belief system that you chose and it was able to effectively put you on the path of healing, then I salute you. I can only hope that you continue to be prosperous in your beliefs and that you respect the lives and journeys of others who choose to find healing outside of your religious beliefs. It doesn't make that person less than you, nor should you look at them through a lens of pity. We are all responsible for our beliefs, and we must accept that others will not believe the way that we do. This is key information. We also must be proactive in our healing. We cannot wait because trauma doesn't wait for us. So why must we wait to be healed from it? Using trauma as a testimony is great, but it should not be the standard when it comes to our well-being and how we view the world and the people in it. We need to break away from that mindset. Like we truly owe it to ourselves. So if you or someone you know is contemplating self-harm or suicide, please reach out to the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. And do everything within your power to reach out to those whose empathy and love makes you feel safe. Build your village and surround yourself with people who love and appreciate you for your intrinsic value as a person, and not on the basis of whether or not you share the same religious beliefs. We owe it to ourselves to heal, as well as to prevent trauma in our community. So many of us suffer in silence, but our voices need to be heard, and our stories need to be told. We need to realize that when it comes to healing from trauma, we have to be the ones to show that we have everything we need to begin that process, to be that example. I'm not saying that trauma has to be the catalyst for these types of situations. And really, I don't wish trauma on anyone. But when it comes to those of us who have dealt with certain traumas in our life and we've made it out on the other side, then we have something special. We have something unique. We have something that will be able to reach people because we have empathy for those people. And that is what we need. That's what we need more of. We are stronger together, but we must also realize that in order to be together, we must exercise that empathy that surpasses what we know and encompasses everything we feel. That's the only way that we will be able to heal from and prevent trauma. So with that being said, I hope that as you go through your journey, you are able to reflect on those things, whether you have been a survivor of trauma or you know someone who has been a survivor of trauma. And we need to not only reflect, but to accept that these things happen. And also, these people have innate strength. Sometimes they understand that strength. Sometimes they need to be shown that the strength exists. And if you are a person that has experienced trauma, or you know of somebody that has experienced trauma, let them know that they are loved. You are also loved. That trauma will not define you. It's not supposed to. And when it comes to being able to move forward in life, you have every right to seek and find happiness. That is your charge. Because when it comes to living life, life is better because you are here. I can't say this for everyone. There are some people that, in my humble, it don't mean anything else to nobody else but me opinion, some people just deserve to die. They don't need to be here. Their existence is not necessary for this world to keep turning. And this is how I feel about those who are abusers. This is how I feel about those who try to exert power over other people. Y'all deserve to die. Y'all don't need to be here. And so I say, and I believe that strongly, your existence does not matter. But for everybody else, I love you. And I'm glad that you're here. And I am glad that you have such a wonderful way of just being and living and surviving. I treasure you. So that's our show, y'all. Y'all know how to find us and support us. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and also take the conversation to our throne room. The links, just like everything else, are in the show notes. Wherever you are, whomever you are, I want to always encourage you to be more introspective and vulnerable with yourself. Know who you are, trust in who you are, love who you are. I just want to say thank you once again for listening. I appreciate your ears, and I hope that if this episode strikes you, or you know someone who could potentially benefit from hearing this episode, that you share it with them, because they need to know that they are appreciated. And with that being said, make every effort to find and keep your peace. Till next time.